But first, kapow! The British government just gave £1.5 billion of your money to Ukraine. That's not my graphic, that's their graphic. The British government published that graphic today, imagining that there would be much rejoicing in the land amongst the people who've just endured a long, cold, wet, and for many hungry winter, are supposed to rejoice that the British government gave away £1.5 billion of their money to the Zelensky regime in Kiev. And they're so proud of it, the Foreign Office website is topped with not "Make Britain Great," not "Britain First," not "We're working for you." No, it's in a foreign language, Slava Ukraina, above that graphic, straight out of a comic, a action hero, action man comic. This shows you how out of touch the British government and the teat-sucking suckers in the British media who live on what comes out of that teat really are. They imagine that in a country where people choose between heating and eating, where pensioners are in poverty, where fuel poverty is everywhere, where millions of our children are living in official poverty in Britain, where workers are on low wages, suppressed year after year after year, where prices are rising, where interest rates are crippling, where energy costs are backbreaking, that in such a country, people will be glad that David Cameron, Lord Snooty, the unelected Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs in Britain, gave away all that money that belonged to them. Can you imagine what could have been done just with this latest tranche of 1.5 billion? How many potholes could have been filled in? How many people could have been kept warm? How many youth clubs could have been reopened, all shuttered up all over the land? How many community facilities? How many public buildings? How much of the public realm? How much of the National Health Service could have been restored, saved as a result of that 1.5 billion pounds? But you gave it to Zelensky. Now, not you directly, but the politicians you elected directly gave it. And those politicians do this because they think that you'll go on voting for them anyway. The Uni Party, the two cheeks of that clenched buttock that is the British political system, they think that they can spend our money on war after war after war, war in the Red Sea, war in the Persian Gulf, war in the South China Sea, war in the Ukraine. They think that you will go on allowing them to write these checks, to send these assets that could be guarding our own coasts, but are in fact guarding and threatening other people's coasts. They think that you will continue to vote for them, setting fire to other people's countries whilst unable to keep our own pensioners warm in the winter time. And it's down to you. If you keep electing them, they will, of course, continue to do what they have always done. It's the definition of madness to believe that doing the same thing over and over again may lead to a different result. Einstein, not me. Now, we have so much to talk about tonight. I must press on. Who was that black guy padding up Downing Street, soft shoe shuffling in his suede loafers just the other day? I recognized him immediately as the chefless Barack Obama. Bathhouse Barry, they used to call him in Chicago. I recognized him immediately, but none of the British media appear remotely concerned about why, unannounced and unexplained, the former president of the United States of America was meeting political and security officials inside number 10 Downing Street. I'm very worried about it. Last time Barry came to Britain, it was to interfere in our Brexit referendum, you may recall. He gave a speech written in Britain because it said, if we vote for Brexit, we'll be at the back of the queue for a trade deal with the United States of America. And Americans famously don't use the word queue. He was uttering a speech written in London, but he'd been drafted in because the stakes were high. And as many people believe, I'm one of them, that he is actually the Wizard of Oz who runs the Biden administration. All the signs to me are that Biden is not fully in control even of his own bowel movements, never mind a nuclear-armed superpower, the mightiest country in the world. So somebody must be running the country, and I believe that somebody is Barack Obama. So why was he here? And more importantly, why does not one single British journalist give a toss about why he was here? I'm going to hazard a guess as to why he was here. I'm going to say it had something to do with Ukraine, or it had something to do with the Israel-Palestine conflict, or it had something to do with the conflict between the West, not NATO, because most of the NATO countries have bailed out of this one, the conflict in the Red Sea against the poor but brave people of Yemen. It was one of those things. He didn't come to sing croon Sam Cooke at them. He came on an errand, on a mission. And it is a sign of the sunken depravity of what passes for journalism in Britain today that not a single British journalist has attempted to find out why Obama was here. The examples of that depravity are so numerous, I literally could run the whole show just adumbrating them. We had another one today. This pervert, I'd never heard of him, this pervert, P. Diddy, the feds raided his house in Florida. He's on the lam, apparently, in his private jet. I don't know what he's being accused of, beyond that it's some class of depravity or other. I've no idea if the allegations against him are true or not. I just know that he's run away to try and avoid justice and the feds. What I do know is that I saw a picture in the British press today where this pervert, P. Diddy, is pictured with his arm around Ginger, Prince Harry. And Harry's in the frame. He's not actually in the story in any way. He's not in the charges, if there are to be any. He's not alleged to have done anything wrong. He was just once in a frame with P. Diddy. Now, I thought when I looked at it, Ginger's in trouble here. This could be an Epstein moment. Until I saw on social media, of course, the whole picture. And at the edge of the actual picture is Prince William, the anointed one. Prince William, he of such even temper, he of such sober ways. He's in the picture with the pervert, P. Diddy, and Ginger Prince Harry. But the British newspapers cut Harry out of the picture. It doesn't suit their narrative, you see, for William to be in a picture that might prove embarrassing. How about that then? That's, of course, only one of 1,000 examples that I could give you, some of which include ourselves. I was contacted by a now online, shall I call it a newspaper? An online publication called The Independent. Ha! Ha! And asked if I had given an interview to a Russian newspaper. They gave me the name of the newspaper and asked me, had I been paid for giving that interview to a newspaper? Now, leave aside that I didn't even know you could get paid for giving interviews to newspapers. I had never heard of this Russian newspaper. I never gave them any interview. I have never given an interview to any Russian newspaper. And the Independent's owned by a Russian whose father was the KGB resident in London. Don't ask me how I know that, or I'd have to kill you. The KGB resident is the joint owner of The Independent, whose journalist wrote a very, very long, I fell asleep during the reading of it, witch hunt attack on me, in which it was in his mind, though never made it to the page, that I had A, given this interview, and B, might have been paid for it. I pointed out to him, Archie, his name was. It's you who was getting paid by the Russians. Well, a Russian is now a member of the House of Lords, as it happens. And he's best buddies with Boris Johnson, as it happens. And Boris Johnson used to slip his MI6 security detail to go and stay at the apparently luxurious residence of that Russian owner of The Independent. This is how low these people are. A journalist receiving payment from a Russian newspaper magnate attacks me for not giving an interview to a Russian newspaper and alleging that I might have been paid for it. All that happened, as the discerning viewer would quickly ascertain, was that the speech I gave in my monologue on Sunday was written down by, amongst others, this Russian newspaper. They seen it on YouTube and they quoted it extensively on YouTube. If only I'd known I could have been paid for it. But enough of these repulsive gutter snipes who slither in the sewer in the name of British journalism. More important issues must now be dealt with. The United Nations Security Council finally passed a resolution by 14 votes to 0, with one abstention, to which I shall come, demanding an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Not a total ceasefire, not a ceasefire that will last necessarily beyond the end of Ramadan, which is more than 2 weeks, but not much more than 2 weeks. So it passed a resolution demanding a ceasefire. It's mandatory, by the way, despite what some have tried ludicrously to claim. When the Security Council passes a resolution, it is mandatory on the subject of that resolution to comply with the decision of the United Nations Security Council. They passed it. Nobody voted against it. But there's no ceasefire. Israel has stepped up the massacre. They are killing more people than they were killing before the resolution was passed. They're massacring people in tents in Rafah right now. They're massacring people in the Al-Shifa hospital, in a hospital right now. They're massacring people who come out to get food aid, which, amongst others, has been dropped from the sky by the aforementioned David Cameron and the British government. The British government wants credit for dropping food to starving Palestinians in Gaza, but is selling weapons to the people who then massacred the people who came out to collect the food that was landing, hopefully not upon them, because several people were killed with these crates falling on top of them. Several Palestinians were drowned trying to get to the crates, dropped into the sea. When there's thousands of aid trucks outside the gate of Rafah that could be opened, and the trucks could come in and without let or hindrance distribute the aid all through the Gaza Strip. So here's my point. Now that the Security Council has demanded a ceasefire and Israel has refused to comply, what happens next? And if nothing happens next, then what is the point of the United Nations Security Council? What is the point of all the money we spend on it if it can pass a resolution that is then completely ignored, defied, without consequence? And I got to thinking, why single out the United Nations Security Council? What about all the other agencies, sinews of the international rules-based order? How are they doing? How is the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, doing in his investigation of the manifest war crimes, crimes against humanity, plausibly including the ultimate crime of genocide? How is he doing? Mr. Khan, his name is. He's British. Mr. Khan. He's the head prosecutor of the ICC. He has not even published an indictment, an arrest, made a charge, never mind bringing anybody to justice in The Hague. He has not charged a single person in 6 months of carnage, which his colleagues also in The Hague at the International Court of Justice have said is plausibly genocide, and sent Israel for trial on the crime of genocide. And whatever happened to the International Court of Justice? I may have been dreaming, but I am sure that by a huge landslide majority, the ICJ sent Israel for trial, required a report from Israel within 30 days as to how they were complying with this ruling, and ordered Israel to stop killing Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Did Israel stop? No, they redoubled the killing in Gaza. Did the ICJ do anything about it? No, nothing at all. Which all vindicates what I said at the time when the ICC was founded, that these agencies, these apparatus pieces of the so-called rules-based order are just lipstick on a pig. The pig is the war pig of NATO and Western imperial power, war after war, war throughout the world, but you've got the lipstick that you can put on to pretend that it's all so civilized. But when push comes to shove, the lipstick is washed off, wiped off, smeared off, and the killing goes on and on and on. Now, do you remember that guy, barbecue, eating a human being in an act of cannibalism on the news in Haiti just the other week? No, I don't either. I just recall that some people said so. But then, as Malcolm X said, if you're not careful, the media will have you hating the oppressed and loving the oppressors. Nowhere more true than in the story of Haiti. Coming up with the one and only Dan Cohen after this short break. Stay tuned.